Welcome back to the show. Connor's still being tight-lipped about his television viewing habits, but we all know his DVR is just full of Gilmore Girl episodes.
Hey, I watch more than just Gilmore Girls. Besides, it's not as bad as some of the reality shows.
Well, it would appear that Nicole agrees with you. She's got another bone to pick with entertainment. Nicole?
Hey guys, it's Nicole Koehn, back at you with another installment of Swing at Me. In 1992, MTV introduced the first season of The Real World, and this is where the beginning of horrid reality TV had its start. The concept of the show is throwing a bunch of random strangers into a house and seeing what happens. The tagline of the series is, when people stop being polite and start getting real. What? First of all, in the real world, people are not always polite, and this show is clearly scripted. Every season also follows this same exact plot line. You have the typical player dude that ends up with the girl that just got out of a relationship and doesn't want to rush things, and that causes drama because the guy messes up and they have a huge fight, they break up, but by the next episode they are back together. And then you have the one person whose sole purpose it is to cause drama or just do things that most would deem completely insane. It surprises me that so many people are in love with this show. I cringe every single time I hear someone mention this. I wonder how they still have people that are willing to actually be on this show. Putting on a resume, cast member of The Real World, city, whatever, and year, who really cares, does not help you with anything. If people are watching it to see The Real World, maybe you should turn off your TV and try going outside. And a word of advice to our viewers, if anyone asks if you watch the show The Real World, always say no. I'm Nicole Koehn, and this has been Swing at Me.
Nicole can be kind of scary when she's angry.
You know what else is scary? How talented the topic of this week's Actor Spotlight is.
I see what you did there, Kaylee. Here's Caleb Myling-Smith to tell us all about him.
The thin and eccentric Andrew Garfield has been acting for a rather short time, but has already caught some pretty big breaks. Andrew Garfield is probably best known for his newest role as the Amazing Spider-Man. While he doesn't exactly capture the geeky, not too popular, low confidence, average Joe Peter Parker that I'm a fan of, he acted in a movie that was good enough to get a sequel. I probably don't like it because he's a 30-year-old man playing a high schooler, but it's pretty common for actors to look and play parts that are a lot younger than they are, and who knows, maybe Spider-Man will finally become an Avenger. I wouldn't hold my breath on that last one, though. He's also in The Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus as Anton the Assistant, which doesn't sound very impressive, but he was one of the main characters and had really fun makeup throughout the entire movie. I think that the character played in this film had a bit more of the Peter Parker vibe I was looking for than the Amazing Spider-Man. He was self-conscious, not incredibly outspoken when he wasn't on stage, but he still kept that sarcastic tone. Of course, he also had a big part in The Social Network, where he got to play a part of the abandoned and eventually betrayed friend of Zuckerberg, a role he pulled off pretty well. He captured the anger and vengeful attitude I imagine anyone would feel if your best friend cheated you out of a few thousand million and eventually $1 billion. He also has some credits for television, but nothing really major. The only one I recognized was his role in Doctor Who's Daleks in Manhattan. Even that was a minor part, though. More interesting are his credits for the stage. He was nominated for a Tony Award, Best Actor featured in a play for his role in The Death of a Salesman, which was his Broadway premiere. As far as acting goes, I honestly think he can be a bit overexpressive, but in his role as Spider-Man, I can't really blame him. It's more casting's fault that he didn't really fit the bill, and his over-eccentric acting actually really worked in The Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus, and in The Social Network, where he had a right to be pretty darn angry. And it kept the scene serious, and unlike The Imaginarium, which was surreal. I'd like to see him in a bit more serious roles, and I think that he could actually make a really good antagonist, with just a bit of makeup. I'm Caleb Myling-Smith, and this has been Andrew Garfield's Spotlight.
Thanks, Caleb. I can't wait to see where Andrew Garfield's career will go in the future. But now it's time for another break.
After this, we still have our final word, so don't go anywhere.
You get lost, you can always be found. Just know you're not alone. 'Cause I'm gonna make this place your home.
Disney Nature's Bears.
He's making a difference.
Haven't we already had a glimpse of something? From the first cry of a baby, the courage of a friend, the love of a mother, a father, I see it, so I believe it.
Do you? Perhaps the entire world.
Where are you going?
Everywhere.
What's up, chicken?
I ain't playing around.
Cheers. Right on.
Get back, bro. You don't know me like that.
Welcome back. We've made it to the end of another episode here at The Real Deal.
And that means another installment of our final word.
Summer is quickly approaching, and you know what that means. Summer blockbusters will be plentiful. One movie to be released this summer that I've waited more than a year to watch is The Fault in Our Stars. I read the book, which is authored by YouTube vlogger John Green, last year and fell in love with the story. The movie adaptation stars Shailene Woodley and Ansel Elgort. Woodley plays 16-year-old Hazel, a cancer patient who goes to a support group and eventually falls in love with witty Augustus Waters, played by Elgort, who is an ex-basketball player and amputee. Normally, I don't like stories in which the main character is terminally ill because I cry like a baby. As we discovered in last week's episode, I cry a lot in movies. Cancer movies are a close second to animal movies, in which I cry so much that I can't enjoy myself. I mean, who really enjoyed watching My Sister's Keeper? I went through a whole tissue package and the movie wasn't even that good. Anyway, I digress. The Fault in Our Stars begins by stating that this is not a cancer story, it's a love story. And it's true. This was one of the loveliest and most realistic love stories I've ever read. I hope this movie will do the book justice. Shailene Woodley has finally broken out of that awful ABC Family show and is proving to be a great actress. I have faith in her simply because she did not disappoint me during Divergent. The Fault in Our Stars will come out in theaters on June 6th. Until then, we must suffice by watching the trailer and fan art over and over again.
Speaking of trailers I had to watch more than once, it's not always necessarily a good thing. Even though it's not due to come out until December, I'd like to take a minute to talk about the upcoming film adaptation of the classic musical, Annie. With the story itself based on the classic comic strip, this marks the third time that the musical has been made into a movie. This film, however, will be a modern re-envisioning of the story, and under guidance of producers Will Smith and Jay-Z, the action moves from New York during the Great Depression to New York during the present day. In the title role stars Quvenzhané Wallis, the little girl who caused a splash back in 2012 for her Academy Award-nominated role in Beast of the Southern Wild. She's still a plucky little orphan who gets adopted by a wealthy man, but this version sees business tycoon Oliver Warbucks transformed into Will Stacks, a politician gunning for mayorship of New York and played by Jamie Foxx. Now, it may be too early to dish out too much criticism since there's only been one trailer released for the film so far, but there are three sticking points that make me question whether this film will be worth the watch. First, the songs. Apart from the iconic numbers Hard Knock Life and Tomorrow, both of which underscore the trailer, many of the original musical songs are full of references to 1930s pop culture. Are they going to cut most of them or simply rewrite them? Second, I'm not even sure that the whole concept of being an orphan really holds water in the 21st century. It would appear that Annie and her friends are in fact now in foster care, but it just doesn't feel the same. And three, Cameron Diaz as the villain, Miss Hannigan. Miss Hannigan is typically depicted as a much older and dowdier woman, and I have trouble at this point believing her as anybody that a civic services person would assign 5 or 6 foster kids to. Her part also appears to contain a lot of bad one-liners. As I've said, I'll have to keep you updated before the eventual December 19 release of Annie, but for now, getting a new deal for Christmas just doesn't seem to have the same magic.
And that wraps up the show for this week. Be sure to check out our website, Facebook, and Twitter pages for news and updates on all things entertainment. I'm Kaylee Russell.
And I'm Connor Fack. We'll see you next week for our last episode of Season 9.